So robots have been investing in US stocks, US ETFs, providing a way for the US to become a piggy bank for the whole world. But that movement may be at risk or maybe reversing. And this is what we're going to be talking about today. So first off, it's important for us to understand the concept of passive investing. So I learned a lot about that with Michael Green. He's one of the biggest advocates of the flows of money that are happening through this principle. So basically, the idea is pretty simple. So you have investments that go automatically into funds without picking and choosing the best options or the best timing for a stock. So what happens is you have kind of two movements, so to speak. So one of them is within the United States, mainly through 401ks. So it creates a passive flow when you get your salary every 2 weeks, and part of that salary is withheld, right, into those ETFs. But the problem is most people don't think about it at all because they're starting a new job, right? They want to get acquainted with their new positions, and in the meantime, they need to choose an allocation for their investments for when they retire, but they don't do that. So what happens is most of the time, time just runs out, and whatever decision is not made gets automatically transferred into an S&P 500, for example. And you have this move that happens every 2 weeks, and nobody thinks about that. There's no timing, and since it's been done automatically through the biggest ETFs like Vanguard or BlackRock, for example, they have an extremely low cost because everything is done automatically. So because of those buying signals that happens all the time, you have a concentration on that flow because it affects with a lot of leverage. There is a multiplicator, a factor there that just grows these companies more and more. So you are basically on an unfair advantage just by being part of the S&P 500 because you get a lot of money coming in automatically. So your funding costs just drops dramatically. But this is within the United States. However, since the US is part of the Eurodollar system, is the core of the Eurodollar system, you have capital flows coming from hedge funds from all over the place, from Asia, from Europe, from like literally everybody. So providing that exceptionalism of the United States. But the problem is when that cycle actually reverses. So what happens there? And we're seeing a few signs about that. But before we jump into those, every video we make on this channel is to provide a little bit of how monetary mechanics work bit by bit, so you have tools to think for yourself. But if you want to dive deeper, maybe you ask yourself, okay, but what can I do about it? Or what can I do about my investments? Or make sure, what is the actual outlook? What are you guys doing with your own money? You can definitely check out our latest BI report, where we dive deep into not only everything that is happening with the latest headlines, but also to interpret the macroeconomic outlook as well. So it's a pretty deep thinking that we do here on those reports. You can have access for free to the latest report as well for a sample. But also, if you want to subscribe, make sure to use the promo code as well on the description below. All right, so let's dive back onto our content. So here you see that passive has become a very present force in the market. So before a few years ago, so active investing or active mutual funds, people who are looking for this alpha, they were the majority. But that has shifted a few years ago, where we see 68% of the whole flows being by passive investing. So especially through ETFs, which are nearly all passive by definition, and also passive mutual funds as well. So this has completely overpowered active funds. And this is extremely important because whatever happens to passive happens to liquidity and happens to all risk on assets, especially Bitcoin as well, which is what interests us the most here. So this flow has two things that I would have on my radar. So and this has been shown by Michael Green as well. So number one is what's happening within the United States on the jobs market, and we discussed many times how the financial economy, the financial markets are completely unrelated to the real economy, right? Normally, bad news or good news or good news, everything is bullish, it just goes up. But on the other hand, there is one thing though, where is a link between the real economy and those passive flows, which is the 401k accounts. So when you get a 401k account, and let's say you're not in a great financial situation or you just quit your job, sometimes you have people who need to pay for bills before they retire. You can still do that. There is a penalty, a 10% penalty, also withholding. I mean, I've dealt with that for a long time, so I know exactly what I'm talking about since I worked with 401ks before. So that kind of movement, if multiplied by millions of people, let's say, even if the unemployment numbers, the official ones, don't really show, they show really an improvement. You have a lot of people who worked full time, or they had a 401k account, and now they just got transferred to the gig economy, like Uber, for example, or food delivery, which do not provide any kind of 401ks. And sometimes it's not enough to make a living out of it. So they have this whole withdrawing movement coming up, increasing the negative flows, right? At the same time, so that's number one. Number two is all about the boomers. So boomers that are now retiring. So we have a huge mass of people that are starting to make those more significant withdrawals because they got the best of the worlds, right? They have a lot of assets. Their 401ks just got absolutely boosted by this whole economy and the passive flows, and now they want to use their money, and that also creates a lot of traction. So we see less and less volume into contributing into those accounts, or to ETFs at least, right? And that movement can trigger a reverse spiral, so to speak, where those automatic buys become automatic sell movements. That is one of we're not there yet, so it's just something that I'm tracking with a lot of interest, because that defines a lot of the movements, right, that happen into macro. But this also creates problems to hedge funds or banks who are leveraged onto a carrying trade. For example, let's say Japan, let's say Europe, or everything is a carry trade nowadays. So you have a cost of funding. Whatever country does not have the dollar as a currency has always that kind of risk onto the FX hedge that they need to do, so that they can get a loan in one in a weaker currency and get that exposed to U.S. markets on a strong currency like the dollar, for example. That move can create a lot of a bigger unwind as well. So that is a way that you could see both of those moves merge together and create a negative outflow for liquidity, right? So you just run for safety, liquidity, or bonds, or you just want to be safe there and risk off. And this is, of course, a risk for Bitcoin as well. This is not something for short term, but that's something that I'm definitely going to be tracking from now on. But the main goal here is to show how passive we have of a world, and how everything, the whole monetary system is just it's just a sum of carry trades all over the place, and the biggest one, of course, is the dollar. So this is why it's so important to understand those flows, because they affect all markets, even though you may think you're not part of it, but everybody is linked to it. So see you in the next video.